Shalom, shalom. Welcome back to the Septuagint versus the Masoretic. Today is a special presentation. It is a sort of an emergency broadcast because, as you know by the title of this video, is tomorrow Passover. This is so important because, well, if we're not keeping the true Passover, we're in error. We're committing sin. We've missed the mark. So it's either you keep it tomorrow, which is at the sundown, which is the 14th day of the first month, or you keep it the following month. But in any case, let's determine what is the truth of the matter. I'm going to start in the Bible. Exodus 12 Exodus 12 gives us the exact timing of the Passover, the precise timing. Especially in the Septuagint translation, it really clears things up as to what is meant by that mysterious, how it is expressed in the Hebrew, at least in the Masoretic, the between the evenings. You shall keep it up until the 14th day of the same month, talking about the Passover. And the whole assembly of the congregation of Israel shall kill it, referring to the lamb or the goat, in the evening. And many people cite this is actually between the evenings. Well, not so. According to the Septuagint, again, the oldest translation of the Holy Scriptures, taken from the original Hebrew that Moses wrote down into the Greek, circa 300 years or so before Jesus Christ lived in the flesh, it says toward evening. It's not in the evening. It's not between the evenings. It is toward evening. What time is that? Well, we know by the New Testament record that was 3 p.m. precisely at that exact moment of time. So it is toward the evening. And so let us just look at the sources we have here, starting with sighted moon. I haven't looked at this yet, so let's just look at this. We have a video from Ancient Path New Moon, which is Becca Biederman, and she says that there is enough barley in the dough stage, and we still have 6 more days until wave sheaf day on Sunday for it to ripen. Again, I respectfully disagree with the 6 more days timing of things. I'm going to cite Leviticus 23, if you allow me to pause the recording for a moment. Okay, so in Leviticus chapter 23, in verse 11, it says here, he, meaning the priest, shall lift up the sheaf before Yah to be accepted for you. When? On the morrow of the first day. First day of what? The Feast of Unleavened Bread, as referred to in the previous verses, in verses 5 and 6 specifically. So the 15th day is the first day of the Feast of Unleavened Bread, meaning the following day, the 16th, which is the morrow of after the first day of the Feast of Unleavened Bread, is automatically, it is the wave sheaf. The problem is, again, the majority of people, Jews and Messianics alike, will look at the Masoretic text, unfortunately. And it says here, the morrow after the Sabbath. And they take that to mean the weekly Sabbath. No, it's not the weekly Sabbath, it's the high Sabbath. It is the first day, more specifically, the first day of unleavened bread. Meaning, the wave sheaf day this year, if we're looking at the timing of things, right now is Monday, the March the 6th. So Tuesday, March the 7th, at sunset, begins Passover, the 14th of the first month. The 15th, which is Wednesday, Wednesday the 8th of March, at sunset begins the Feast of Unleavened Bread, meaning automatically the following day, which would be Thursday, right? Let me just do the math in my head. That would be Thursday, the March the 8th. Is that correct? No, the 9th. Thursday, March the 9th would then be Wave Sheaf Day. So would there be, or will there be enough abib barley for that day of Thursday? Again, not Sunday, March the 12th, but 3 days earlier. How can we prove this? Well, if we look, I'm just going to mention it briefly in passing, but when Jesus Christ, when Yeshua HaMashiach in Hebrew said, I will rise again, when? On the third day. But he also said, I only give one sign, which is the sign of Jonah, which is 3 days and 3 nights he will be in the heart of the earth. He'll be in the grave for 3 days and 3 nights. Meaning, he didn't rise on the third day. He actually rose on the fourth day. Technically, he did. It was the fourth day because he was in the grave for 3 days. 3 days were completed. It's just simple math. If you can't count to 4, I'm not sure we can agree on things. If we can't count, do simple arithmetic, simple counting that a 5-year-old could do. So he was in the grave for 3 days and 3 nights, meaning he rose on the fourth day. But he said the third day. He will rise again on the third day. And it's mentioned multiple times in the New Testament. This is the third day. What does that even mean? It means the third day of the feast. The third day of the Feast of Unleavened Bread. In relation to the feast, not the third day as it relates to Jesus Christ being crucified and being in the grave. So that's where we get into some issues. It's just the reckoning of these things in regards to the timing of the Passover. Is it the 15th? Is it the 14th? Well, the Bible says it's the 14th. And exactly at 3 p.m. When the lamb was killed. Meaning that is done on the 14th day, not the 13th. I know a lot of people will say you have to do it on the 13th, but technically it is on the 14th. Meaning the 14th at evening is the Passover. That's when the Seder is done. And then the 15th day of the month is the first day of the Feast of Unleavened Bread. But for a lot of people, especially the Jewish community, this whole season is just called Passover. It's the Passover season. So the Feast of Unleavened Bread is not really distinguished between the day of Passover. So let's look at, we've got 5 tabs to look at. So let's just look at this. Here are some pictures of the barley and dough stage. So they have 6 more days, but actually more like 3 days for it to ripen. The storks are back today. So we have pictures there. So will this ripen in 3 days? The foot washing is to be performed Monday evening after sunset. Okay. Yeshua is killed on the 14th, which is Tuesday. He is killed at 3 p.m. Tuesday night, the Passover meal after sunset and eaten with unleavened bread. So yeah, it's a little bit unclear for some people as to how does the Passover meal conflict with the first day of unleavened bread. You are to eat unleavened bread for 7 days, starting with the Passover meal tonight. Okay, that's talking about the Tuesday night, not tonight. Wednesday is the first day of unleavened bread, beginning the night before. We will be hosting an online service, 10 a.m. Eastern Standard Time Wednesday morning, and then 2 p.m. again for the afternoon service. The Shemitah year began Aviv 1. You should have much of your food stored up already. Okay, I'm just going to skip over that. And then if you watch her videos, Rebecca, Mrs. Biederman, goes over the areas that she surveyed. So I think that's pretty much the heart of the newsletter. Okay, so I'm going to close that tab. So it's still a big question mark. I'm not 100% convinced that it is or isn't right now. So let's just keep reading on here. This is from Nazarene, Israel. Let's see. The new moon was declared, or I should say the new year was declared February 21st, based on the new moon and the barley first fruits. Meaning Passover would be March 7th, tomorrow, mid-afternoon. Okay, does that make sense? Yeah, because today's the 13th, then it'll be the 14th. Okay, so it seems there could be a case to be made that Yeshua was killed at 3 p.m. technically on the 13th of the first month, leading to the 14th. But let's look at that later on. It's really good to review every year. I'm just going to get into the heart of this. We have a good quantity of barley that is Aviv ready. Keep the feast with rejoicing. So that's March the 6th. That's today. Praise be to Yah. Hallelujah. His timing with the Aviv barley proves perfect every year. As of the latest barley report by Becca Biederman, Ancient Path New Moon, on March the 6th, there is officially enough Aviv barley to present the true first fruits unto Yah Elohim on the day, I'm just going to translate it to English, the wave sheaf day, the day of the wave sheaf offering, on March the 12th, well actually technically March the 9th, again, according to the Septuagint. So there looks like the fields are ripe already. That's what it looks like, okay, so this is the previous report. So on the 21st, there was not enough Aviv medium dough barley to form an omer, unless Yah drastically alters the course of the weather. We believe there will be enough barley. So the update is there is enough. There is enough to make an omer. Okay, and then there's a link here. Maybe I won't go there right now. I just clicked it anyway. Let me just pause the video for a moment, the recording. Okay, so we're looking at Nazarene, Israel. This article is determining the Passover dates. So this is talking about how a combine is called a combine because it combines actions. It slaps super ripe, fragile barley with a paddle, knocking everything into a large tray. Because the barley is already brittle, the seed head shatters and the grain is largely separated from the chaff. Then the seed is further separated from the chaff. In contrast to this, in ancient times, harvesting had to be done by hand, with sickles, and ancient sickles were not nearly as sharp as modern steel sickles. Ancient sickles were typically made either of flint, that's stone, or sharpened animal bones mounted in wood. For example, this is an ancient flint sickle found in the land of Israel. This would be nowhere near as sharp as a modern steel hand sickle. And then here's a picture of an ancient hand sickle made with animal bones that was found in the Middle East. So the issue is that when the barley is fully ripe and golden brown, as in the picture with the combine above, it is already much too fragile to harvest with a hand sickle. If you hit the golden brown barley with a hand sickle, the grain will shatter and fall to the ground. The crop will be lost. Let me repeat that. The crop will be lost. The farmer ruined. To make sure this does not happen, a farmer using a hand sickle must harvest the barley when it has just barely matured. I think he meant barely, not barley. When it has just barely matured and is still just a little bit tender and green. And if we are willing to accept it, this is the very definition of aviv. So it has to be green, a young ear of grain. That's why the month is called abib or aviv. I think abib is actually closer to the original Hebrew, the ancient Hebrew. Aviv is more of a modern Hebrew. Anyway, stages of barley growth. So we have to look, let's look at this chart from the University of Wisconsin. So the barley passes through several stages of growth. The first stage is called the vegetative growth stage. During vegetative growth, the barley plant is soft and flexible. It can get hit by hail, and it bounces right back. This is why the wheat and the spelt were not destroyed by the hail in Exodus 9:32, because they were still in the vegetative growth stage, and there's no discrepancy there with the Septuagint. It seems to agree with the Masoretic in that respect for Exodus 9:32. So they were still soft and flexible. Okay, so that is vegetative growth stage. Where's this? Not sure which one that would be. In any case, after the vegetative growth stage, the head emerges from the boot. So the head emerging from the boot. So this is the vegetative growth stage, just before the head emergence. Then the plant buds and flowers. Sorry, I was trying to say bud and flowers at the same time. This is called the budding and flowering stage. Okay. The plant stalks start to become rigid as they are preparing to bear the weight of the grain head aloft. So further, with the development of the grain head, they become top heavy. If cereal grasses get hit by hail or even a hard rain, the impact of the hail or weight of the wet grain heads can cause the plants to topple over. The stalks can kink, causing the crop to be damaged or lost. This is why the flax and barley were destroyed in Exodus 9:31. Okay, you know what? I think I should look that up. The flax was flowering, the barley was aviv, which we shall see is medium dough. That is to say, the plants were now top heavy, and their stalks were no longer flexible. So the weight of the hail and the weight of any wetness pulled the plants over, and they were struck. Okay, so Exodus 9:32. Let's look that up just to keep things honest. I don't want to just assume, and I don't want you to assume that I'm right. So Exodus 9:32. Okay, it says here, but the wheat and the rye were not smitten, for they were late. But going back 31, the flax and the barley were smitten, for the barley was advanced, and the flax was seeding. So was in the ear or advanced. The flax was seeding, was bald. So advanced is another way to say it was in the ear. Not that it was overripe. So it was in the ear. Or where's ear? It would be around here, the boot or head. Okay, let me just review this again, just so it makes sense to me, because I'm reading it, but it's not making sense to me. So let's just rewind a little bit. Once again, it says the wheat and spelt were not destroyed by the hail. They were still in the vegetative growth stage. Is that what it says? They were not smitten, for they were late. So they were not, they did not grow up yet. They were late. So it agrees, both translations. The flax and the barley were smitten because the barley was advanced, and the flax was seeding. So if we look at the chart again, the barley plant is soft and flexible. They were not destroyed. Okay, what was not destroyed? Oh, the wheat and rye. Okay, so, but then if we look at once it gets in the head, with the development of the grain head, they become top heavy. So that's what happened. It was top heavy, or in other words, it was advanced or in the ear. So let's go on to the next topic, the error of harvestable fields. Some people incorrectly teach that before the barley can be damaged by hail, it has to be already completely mature, such that it is dry, brittle, and golden brown. However, that is completely incorrect, as the flax in Exodus 9 was also damaged by hail, even though it was only in the bud. This shows us that cereal grains can be damaged by hail, even when they are only in bud. They do not need to be fully combine ripe. To reiterate, what makes grains susceptible to hail is that they are entering the budding and flowering stages, which makes the stalk brittle and the plant top heavy. So here's barley development. Let me just fast forward to the dough stage. Okay, 17 to 18 days after fertilization, the seeds are filled with starch. They will not gain any more mass, the seeds. They begin to dry out, harden, and lose moisture. They begin to change color from green to yellow, indicating the plant is starting to dry up and die. This is called the medium dough stage, and that's what they're noticing right now in the land of Israel, Rebecca specifically, and her witnesses. As we will see, this is what qualifies as abib barley, because the plant is basically fully mature, yet still tender and slightly green. Medium dough barley should have the consistency of medium hard bread dough. One should be able to cut it with the fingernail, but it should not be watery inside at all. That's an important point. It should be turning golden brown, but still have a slightly greenish tint because it has just barely finished maturing. Yet it should be viable as seed because it is fully formed. It has finished maturing. So notice how the grains in the pitcher are just starting to turn yellow, yet still have a slightly greenish tint. These ones here. Notice also the texture inside. The grain can be cut with a fingernail. It is not watery at all. This is the ideal stage for harvesting with a hand sickle, because the grains now have as much mass as they will ever have. But the likelihood of shattering the head when the stalk is struck with the sickle is not yet very great. That is to say that if a farmer harvests his barley in the medium dough stage, he may have to dry the grains before threshing, but he will not likely lose much of his crop to sickle shock. Only this harvesting condition does not last very long. Here's a field where the barley plants have just started to turn yellow, but it still has a greenish tint. This indicates the seed is fully mature. The plants are beginning to die and are getting ready to drop their seed, that is, reproduce. This yellowing is a good indicator that it is time to inspect for medium dough. We will explain why medium dough barley is abib in a moment. Let us finish talking about the stages of barley development. So 21 days after fertilization, the grains have lost some of their moisture. The barley grain has the consistency of hard bread dough. You can still cut it with a fingernail, but it takes effort. It has a leathery consistency. This is called the hard dough stage. It is about the latest a farmer wants to harvest his crops with a hand sickle, lest the heads shatter and drop their seeds during the harvesting process. Remembering this stage comes only a few days after the medium dough stage. Okay, let's repeat that. That's important. remembering that this stage, hard dough stage, comes only a few days, not a few weeks or a month, a few days after the medium dough stage. Now we can understand why Jesus Christ or Yeshua tells us that the wise farmer immediately puts in his sickle as soon as the grain has become ripe, because the harvest has come. So if you wait another month, you'll lose your crops, essentially. So the barley continues to harden and lose moisture. It enters what is called the very hard dough stage. In this stage, it is still possible to dent the grain with a fingernail, but it is not possible to cut it with a fingernail. Very hard dough is already too brittle for ancient sickle harvesting. If you try to harvest with an ancient hand sickle, at the very hard dough stage, a lot of the heads will shatter, and what? The barley crop will be lost, and the farmer ruined. So, from the soft dough stage to the hard dough stage, it's only, how many days? 7 days? So you can't really wait a full month because you'll lose all your crops. Finally, at 31 days, after the barley is pollinated, the barley plant is ripe for harvesting with a modern combine. So as we mentioned earlier, this is much too ripe for harvesting with a sickle, because if you try to harvest with an ancient hand sickle, a very large percentage, if not most, of the crop will be lost. So we should emphasize again, the whole process of maturation takes place very quickly. It's not something that can be delayed another month or added an additional month. You're going to lose your crops. Barley reaches the medium dough, abib stage, which is what this first month is named after, approximately 17 to 18 days after the barley is fertilized. That is when farmers should begin harvesting their crops. Because they have, let's underline this or highlight it, because they have less than a week to do so before the barley heads begin shattering when they are struck with an ancient hand sickle. So that is why they should begin harvesting their crops, the medium dough stage, because they have less than a week to do so if they're using ancient hand sickles. At approximately 31 days following pollination, the barley becomes medium dough, or I should say about 13 to 14 days after the medium dough. The barley plants will be in the stage we call modern combine ripe. At this late stage, the barley heads are already too fragile to harvest with a hand sickle, because the heads will absolutely shatter, and it is this shattering upon which modern combine harvesting depends. Yet ironically, some barley search groups wrongly call this stage abib. So that is the confusion here, because they call it modern combine ripe. This isn't going by the ancient reckoning of abib. It is using this modern method. Okay, bringing the very first fruits of abib. It is imperative we bring the first sheaf of abib to Yah to clear the way for the rest of the harvest. Okay, I'm going to just fast forward a little bit here. Abib, okay. Just going to scan through here. Let me just pause the recording. I don't want to waste people's time. We're at 30 minutes already. Okay, welcome back. So, I want to mention two things in this article. It's talking about the timing of Pentecost, actually, Shavuot. So, if you get the day of the wave sheaf offering wrong, then you get the day of Pentecost wrong, or Shavuot wrong, because you're supposed to count from wave sheaf day 50 days. Let's look at the references here. Deuteronomy 16, verse 9. 7 weeks you shall number to yourself when you have begun to put the sickle to the corn. So this is hand sickle, ancient hand sickles to the, not corn, but barley. Again, this is a mistake in both translations. Corn was a American crop, not a Middle Eastern crop. So it's actually barley. Sickle to the barley. You begin to number 7 weeks. And then the parallel verse in Leviticus 23. You shall number to yourselves from the day after the Sabbath. What Sabbath is that? The high Sabbath, not the weekly Sabbath. From the day on which you shall offer the sheaf of the heave offering, 7 full weeks. Until the morrow after the last week, so 7 weeks, plus 1 day, 50. You shall number 50 days. So that's how you determine Pentecost. So if we're going by that reckoning, I didn't want to talk about Pentecost today, but we are. Here we are. So if we look at the 9th, if we count 50 days from there, or 7 weeks from there, it would be 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. It would be April the 28th, thereabouts. I think at the sunset of 28th. But anyway, this video is not about when is Pentecost or Shavuot. It is tomorrow Passover. That's the topic we're talking about. Okay, so let's continue reading this article, talking about the Aviv again. And there is a scripture being quoted talking about Carmel barley, Leviticus 2, verses 14 and 15. So let's look at that before we look at the last article. If you would offer a sacrifice of first fruits to Yah, it shall be new grains ground, roasted for Yah. So you shall bring the sacrifice of the first fruits. So it says ground and roasted. And the Masoretic green ears of barley, I know it means barley, dried by the fire, beaten. Crushed caramel. Okay, crushed caramel is that verse 14. Corn beaten. So this one says grains, new grains ground and roasted. So there's different ideas on what that entails. But some say it's a discoloration due to extreme stress on the plant. So it actually produces different colors. You'll notice like a purple stripes because when barley is exposed to extreme climactic stress, it can change color. The change in colors is caused by the barley generating anthocyanins. Cyan means blue. Anthocyanins are secondary plant metabolites which help the plants to adapt to extreme environments. That is, they help the plants to adapt to survive. Current research indicates that anthocyanins are potentially beneficial to human health. Can we imagine the parallels with Yeshua? Yeah, he went through extreme stress as well and was sweating blood, as was described. So Sister Biederman suggested this purple barley was what Leviticus 2:14 refers to as Carmel barley. Okay, and Karam. Okay, so they're saying Karam and Carmel is associated with wine and wine colors, the same root as Carmel. And these anthocyanins appear when the barley is exposed to extreme stresses, just as Yeshua was exposed to extreme stress. So if this understanding is correct, and that's speculation, the following verses would seem to speak of Yeshua as being symbolized by the striped wine-colored barley as well. No, that's not what these verses refer to him coming as conquering Messiah because his garments are stained by the blood of those he kills when he returns. He has borne our griefs. This one is Isaiah does line up with that, but not the second coming. So what it is saying is that even when there's a year with extreme weather, as they had in 2021, we are to present him, the very first sheaf of barley that becomes available, as it is the fact that we have presented him with the very first of the barley clears the way for the rest of the harvest. In other words, no matter whether caramel means hard dough or wine colored, we are to bring him the very first sheaf. And I agree with that 100%. That is what clears the way for the rest of the harvest. And this also speaks of Yeshua, who is the first of the first fruits. So it seems sighted moon, an ancient path new moon, which is Rivka Biederman, and Nazarene Israel, these three all agree the new year has started already. We are in the new month. We are in the month of Aviv. Here's the videos. You can watch those on your own time. Actually, you know what? I'm going to play this video just because I think it's very, it is important. So let's play this video first before reading this last article or newsletter. Oh, okay. I can't do it that way.
Long plane ride, but it was worth it. It didn't matter if it wasn't worth it. It was just something we have to do. We have to do so to cut down with the takanot and the maasim, which we're not fighting yet. We will later, but I'm here to tell you we have dough. We have abib barley, everybody. This is the same location we were at last year. One of the several locations we looked at last year, but this is where we actually pulled, would have been a homer's worth out of this field. A little bit further north from where we were at last year. Again, when they were just harvesting it, the seed went up. Jehovah just threw it on this side this year instead of over there on this year. But you can see this whole little section right here is just brown. We have our own. So that's great news. So now let's start our year and have our Passover, and then we just get busy obeying Jehovah the rest of the year. So praise Jehovah for today, for getting me here safe, and allowing me to be a part of this. So I'm super excited, super stoked to be hanging out with Becky in Israel. Missing Joe though, that's okay. I mean, Joe can
No.
But again, I felt it in my heart for the brethren and for myself, of course. I have to know. I'm not in the business of taking somebody else's word for it, so that's why we're here. And so excited.
So, as positive as those reports are, I think it's only fair to read the counter argument to whether this is the new year, whether it is Passover tomorrow, indeed. And this is from Devorah's Date Tree. So I'm going to read this in full. It says here, this was sent out today. Dear friends, as we prepare to head out for the barley inspection in just a couple of weeks, so they haven't inspected yet, which I don't think is very proactive anyway. I thought this would be a good opportunity to review what is Aviv barley. Aviv is the term found in the Tanakh for when the grain is developed, which means almost all the moisture in the seed has been absorbed. And we went through that to some degree in the Nazarene Israel article. At this stage, the barley is light in color. It can be destroyed by hail. It can be parched and eaten. So that's what happens when it's at that stage. Aviv barley cannot be determined by simply looking at the field, as not all light-colored barley has reached the stage of Aviv, even if the heads are bent over. Rather, it's the moisture content of the seed that determines whether the crop is developed, whether it would be destroyed by hail, and can be parched and eaten. In fact, to this day, farmers decide when to harvest based on the moisture content of the seed. I'm going to just rebut that, yes, that's true, but again, that's using the combine method. In ancient times, they didn't use the combine method. They went out and used the hand sickle to do it by hand. So they wouldn't decide based on whether everything's overripe. They'd do it based on whether it's ready now. On our inspections, we always determine whether a field is Aviv based on the moisture content. We randomly check the moisture content of seeds throughout the field by squeezing the sides of the kernel with our thumb and index finger. If the seed shoots out, this means the seed has not finished developing. However, if when we squeeze the kernel, the seed does not shoot out, we consider this Aviv. We also always provide you with a long, boring video of us doing this so you can make your own conclusions. Remember, Aviv is a stage of the barley's development, and therefore it must be determined in the field, cutting the stalks and letting them dry out, or parching them with fire to evaporate the moisture. So cutting the stalks, letting them dry, parching them with fire to evaporate the moisture does not constitute Aviv barley. That is simply unripe barley, which has been dried out or has been parched. Also remember that the omer is brought from the first fruits of the harvest, and the harvest only starts once the field is Aviv, that is harvest ready. After harvesting, the barley is left out to dry and needs to be threshed and winnowed outside. You can't do that if it is still raining. And to answer your next question, at the time of this writing, March the 6th, we are still expecting more rain throughout the country. Okay. So they seem to kind of poo-poo on the reports that the barley is indeed Aviv. So again, I respect what other people say about this, what Devorah Gordon is saying about this. I'm not going to say anything disrespectful about what they believe, because frankly it is not very, very clear unless or until they can just take the seed out and try to divide it with their thumb and index finger, the kernel. And I think we haven't really seen that, but however, it was reported that it is indeed in the medium dough stage. So whichever month you choose to keep, whether it's Passover tomorrow or it's Passover next month, prove all things. Prove it to yourself. Prove the scriptures. Pray about it. Use discernment. Pray for discernment. This is not an easy thing to simply get. So yeah, this adds a big question mark to what seems to be pretty clear from the previous reports. But the problem is, and here's the problem. I'm going to finish with this message. Let me just pause the video. Okay, so the problem is, or potentially is, if you don't keep Passover tomorrow, what happens? Then you've missed it. You've missed the real Passover. However, if you do keep it tomorrow night, and turns out, okay, well, the fields were not Aviv as we thought, as we previously believed, you can still keep the following Passover. You didn't miss it. So it's either a win-win. You keep Passover tomorrow, and you were wrong, but you still have a second chance, or it's a lose-win. meaning, or it's a lose-lose actually, not really lose-win. It's a double lose because you didn't keep the right Passover, which would be tomorrow, potentially in that scenario. And when you keep that second Passover, you're already late because the barley that was being inspected was found to be overripe, and thus the crops were lost. There is no wave sheaf because the wave sheaf was lost. So that's the potential problem you get into. So, in my estimation, it is safer to keep the Passover tomorrow as a precaution. We're not making our own laws. We're doing this as a precaution because, again, if you miss the mark, well, that's the definition of sin, isn't it? It's not breaking the law. It's not rebelling. It's actually missing the mark. Meaning you're trying to obey God. You're trying to obey Yah, trying to keep the Torah, but you missed the mark due to your fallibility, due to our human errors, due to gray areas such as when it comes to Passover and determining the new year, determining what is Aviv and what is not. So I think that's all I have to say about this. Again, it's up to you what you want to do. Personally, I want to do what our Creator wants us to do, and it does take a lot of prayer. It does take a lot of humility to just submit and say, okay, let's see, let's pray about it, and maybe ask for a sign. But there are signs given already. They are seen in the Aviv barley. They are seen in the new moon. They're seen. Yes, both groups determine the new year by the sighted moon. I know that, but I mean to say the Aviv barley really is the hard evidence. No pun intended. It's the medium dough stage, which is what is being seen, which is what is being found. And if I'm just gonna be to be frank right now, Devorah's group has not even started their barley inspection, which I don't know if they live in Israel or not. I can't answer that. That's not for me to say. I do know, however, when it comes to Rivka Biederman, she is very proactive in her searches. She's very thorough, and it seems to me, at least my impression is, that is her full-time job. She's not doing it as a side hobby or anything like that. That seems to be her life's mission, to report these things for those who are trying to follow the biblical Passover. Again, not traditional Passover or whatever everyone else is saying, the majority of the world, whether it's Messianics, the rest of modern Judaism, or Church of God, or whatever feast-keeping group, Passover observing group you want to name. It's not based on that. It's based on what is in the Torah, what is historically done, that matches up, lines up with Scripture, lines up with the science. And by science, I mean the stages of barley, not some kind of pseudoscience. And you go by that. You go by faith in what is found in the word of Elohim. So that's all for this video. I hope it was helpful to you. Certainly it was helpful for me. Essentially, I wanted to do this for myself, but I figure if anyone else would find this helpful, then hopefully that's what this video does. So thanks very much for your time. I hope this clears things up. And again, prove all things. That's what Sighted Moon's slogan is. That's not what our slogan is. Not that we don't prove all things, but I think if we have a slogan, it's just, the word is truth. Yah's word is truth, and that's the gold standard. So, don't let me be right, and don't let you be right. Let the Eternal be right. Let Elohim be right. Let Yah be right. And let us seek Him with all our being, with all our mind, all our strength, all our soul. And let us ask for discernment. Ask Him to help us want the things He wants, to think what He wants us to think, to say the words He wants us to say, and to do the works He wants us to do, and to keep the Passover that He wants us to keep, and in the way that He wants us to keep it. Because I could keep the Passover tomorrow, yet still harbor sin in my life, still be a hypocrite, still treat people not correctly. I can mistreat them. I can not love my neighbor, and my Passover, my observance would not be acceptable. So, in that spirit, I think we should continue in this new holy day season, the spring holy day season, the Passover season. So thank you very much for your time once again. Ladies and gentlemen, this is the emergency broadcast for Is Tomorrow Passover. Please like this video, subscribe to this channel if you have not already. If you have, thank you very much for your support. We appreciate it very much. Until next time, salam, shalom, and peace be unto you. We'll continue with our regularly scheduled videos in the next one. Shalom, shalom.